This is the Global Economic Commodities Scrap Metal and Recycling Report by our Bentley roll-off trailer and open-top trailer, August 31st, 2020. U.S. weekly steel production rose to 1.412 million tons, and about 5-month high as the economy continues its slow growth. Crude oil price rose to $42.97 a barrel, near a multi-month high as major production cuts remain in place, slow demand increases, and no major storm damage in and around Texas and the Gulf of Mexico after last week's storm. The U.S. oil rig count fell to 180, near a decade low, down a huge 88.8% from the 2014 record high due to low prices and the U.S. OPEC deal to cut production. U.S. weekly oil production rose to 10.8 million barrels per day, near the multi-year low on low prices and the same U.S. OPEC deal to cut production so as to get prices up. Scrap steel number one heavy melt export buying price Philly was steady at $220 a gross ton, at a multi-month high on good export demand and good supply. Scrap steel number one heavy melt price was steady at $211.67 a gross ton, with major upward price pressure for September on increased U.S. and global demand. Hot rolled coil steel rose to $25.03 per hundredweight, a multi-month high on increased demand, along with increased iron ore and scrap metal prices. Copper rose to $3.03 a pound, a multi-year close. This is great economic news. Copper is doctor metal. The health of the economy can be detected by the price of copper, so the economy is pretty healthy. Aluminum rose to 79.8 cents per pound, a multi-month high, leaving out spikes on continued global growth and a good balance of supply and demand. The U.S. growth rate, GDP, for Q2 had its second estimate, and that showed growth fell 31.7%, the sharpest drop ever recorded. The great news is Q3, Q4, and 2021 will be much better. The U.S. Federal Reserve announced a major policy change this week. The current policy is to raise interest rates to keep inflation at 2% or less. The new policy is to raise interest rates after an average, that's an average of 2%. This means 3% inflation or more will be okay. U.S. consumer sentiment for August rose to 74.1, the second highest in months, as there were fewer concerns about the year ahead and consumer expectations were revised higher. U.S. sales of new single-family homes for July soared 13.9% from June, the highest in 14 years. Low interest rates and a recovery from the slump were key factors. This is great news for high-wage jobs. Wall Street's Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 654 points to 28,654, a multi-month high. The S&P 500, which is a broader measure of the market, keeps hitting new record highs and had the best August so far since 1986. Markets are expecting a good economy. We are very optimistic going forward to 2021, and that should be a great economic year. There will be a huge recovery from record level problems. How could there be anything other than better news going forward? Why? We are recovering from the worst pandemic in 100 years, the worst unemployment percent ever, the worst weekly job loss ever, the worst GDP decline ever, the worst point drop in the stock market ever. We will recover from the above with the $3.3 trillion or more of stimulus and record low interest rates. We are on the upswing, which is outstanding news. As always, feel free to call or email me with any questions, and we hope all have a safe and profitable week.